Want to welcome viewers to our February 1st agenda review workshop for this Thursday's regularly called Johnson City Commission meeting. The meeting will be on February the 4th at 6 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Lee's Executive Order number 71, the meeting is being conducted electronically via Zoom, and that requires that the membership of the board be accounted for by a reading of the roll. Mr. Peterson, could you read the roll, please?
Commissioner Brock.
Here.
Commissioner Hunter.
Here.
Commissioner Murphy.
Here.
Vice Mayor Fowler. And Mayor Wise.
Here. So I know Commissioner Hunter submitted some questions about the agenda that there were responses to, and I think Commissioner Brock added some to that as well that I believe have been answered. Do the commission have any items of interest specific that they want to get additional information about? Commissioner Brock, do you want to go first? We'll just do this alphabetically rather than leaving me in the position of making arbitrary choices.
I haven't seen the answer to the questions I submitted, so.
Do you want to restate them?
I have to find my email.
Do you need just
here.
a minute? Okay.
Please.
We'll come back to you. Commissioner Hunter, do you have follow-ups? You're muted.
I'm in the same position as Commissioner Brock. Let me, I'm pulling them up right now. Give me one moment.
Okay. Commissioner Murphy, are you ready with any follow-ups or questions you may have?
I just wanted to hear a little bit more information about 5.1.3, the sewer project contract increase. Just wanted to hear a little bit more information about that. And I'm not sure if that was inquired by Commissioners Brock or Hunter already.
All right. Well, let's since we have Mr. Witherspoon on, Tom, do you want to offer some background on 5.1.3, the Hazen and Sawyer Lower Brush Creek?
Yes, Mayor, will. John Lane is also going to participate on that. He lost the feed and he's logging back on now, but let me go through an overview real quick. And I'll attempt not to be redundant with what's already in the packet. It is replacement of a large sewer interceptor about 22,000 feet. We now are doing that in two contracts, about a 2/3, 1/3 contract. The amendment is for the engineering services for our design engineer, Hazen and Sawyer. The bulk of the amendment deals with the actual inspection service, field inspection services. We call that RPR, resident project inspection, but it is in fact field inspection. So that's the individual that is watching the contractor on behalf of the city during the construction of the project. The original engineering agreement was presented and approved by the board back in 2014. At that time, we did not include RPR services or field inspection services as part of that. John went back and found the email to that, and we'd stopped doing that because A, we didn't know whether we were going to have capacity internally or not, and expertise internally to do that with city crew, with a city personnel or not. In that case, at that time, some of y'all that are on the board remember Jim Sipe. Jim was our heavy civil guy. Jim is was about the same age I am. There was some uncertainty about when Jim was going to retire and whether he was going to be around at the time this project commenced, and unfortunately he passed away. So for context, this is the second largest construction project in the department's history, behind the regional wastewater treatment plant. It's a big project. It's a heavy civil project. It's got, as prompted the question, it's got a lot of zeros to it. And typically when you've got a project with a lot of zeros, if you have any issues with it, the issues that you're going to have will have a lot of zeros to them.
Tom, may I interrupt? Commissioner Fowler has joined us, or Vice Mayor Fowler, sorry. We're talking about agenda item 5.1.3. This is the wastewater interceptor replacement project, just so that you know what Tom is talking about.
Perfect. Lower Brush Creek. Got it.
Back to you, sir.
Thank you. So John provided a good history of the project delivery. We did bid it. Numbers came in high. Our consultant value engineered it. We broke it into 2 projects. We have bid what we call contract 1 now. As far as inspection services go, we've got 5 current inspectors, and we usually try to handle most of the field inspections via force account or with city personnel. And they're either inspecting capital projects or they're inspecting a variety of public infrastructure development projects. So as we said, the amendment has got a lot of zeros to it. It's approaching $500,000 or right at $500,000. Other than the inspection, there are 3 minor components on that. The additional cost to rebid and break the project back up into 2 contracts instead of 1. We did decide to make the project SRF loan compatible because we did get a $15 million loan, and originally we were going to private finance that. That had some changes that had to be made, but that at the time we made the decision, that resulted in about $2 million worth of savings to the ratepayers. And then there's a slight component that has to do with making sure that we have regulatory compliance as best possible with the interceptors. So what I'd like to do is just let John show you 3 slides. It kind of puts this project into perspective. John.
Thanks, Tom. Let me pull this up real quick. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So pull up there. So here's just a couple quick slides just about the water sewer capital projects to date. So we have actually 24 active water sewer projects going on right now. So to kind of breakdown of that 24, it's about a little over $83 million total in capital projects for water sewer. Ones that are in active construction is a little over a third. So 27.9 million. We're either wrapping up construction or entering construction on these projects. Of the breakdown, kind of as Tom said, of the 24, we generally try to do in-house water sewer inspection staff when possible. So of that 24, 19 of them, we're doing our own in-house staff for inspection services during construction. There's 5, though, that we have flagged as having additional external construction field inspection. So one of the ones today that we're talking about, the Lower Brush Creek Interceptor Project, it'll be contract 1 and contract 2. K2D sewer basin rehab project, which we're almost finished with. We also had one external RPR or field inspection for that project as well, just based on staffing. We had our inspector for the time was committed to the downtown sewer rehab project at the time. And then also every year or every other year, we have an ongoing water tank rehab and recoding projects. We've been doing the Masters Knob one now, and this fall will be West Hills tank. So those are kind of the ones we have targeted, but 19 of the 24 are usually done by in-house inspection. And this is kind of, it's a lot on this page, just a quick overview of the 24. So like we said, the majority of them, this column kind of just shows which ones are in active construction, which is just a little over a third total. And this just shows the planning purposes.
John, that page did not, excuse me, that page did not change to the next slide if you've gone on to slide 2.
I did. Still didn't change over?
No.
John, if you'll hit the F5 button, I think that'll fix it.
F5. That's weird. It's still showing his next slide on here. Still not changed.
There, it changed then, John.
Well, the next slide I was trying to show was going to show just the general summary of all the different projects we have in an Excel spreadsheet form. And then the final slide was a Gantt chart, which we showed kind of Gantt chart, just a construction schedule where it kind of shows where the overlap of all of them.
What we tried to do with the Gantt chart is project out.
Remote in and change it.
I'm sorry, John. What we tried to do with Gantt chart is project out the various projects when they're overlapping, Most every time the construction inspectors have multiple projects that they're going to be looking over, but there is some degree of limit between travel time.
Can you see that now?
Yes.
Can y'all see that?
Yes. Yeah, we've got it, John.
Can't hear anyone speaking now.
Okay. Wendy, I'll go ahead and finish it up then. But anyway, that indicates the planning that we've done, looking out to see if we had enough capacity, if we had the quality of individuals to do the inspection work. So in this case, the driver behind the big number is the amount monthly is not atypical from what we usually see for utilizing a consultant to do the inspection. In this case, the extent of construction is about 19 months. So the length of the time is what's driving the number for the project. Currently, the contractor is getting the notice to proceed to start, begin mobilization in the middle of February. Right now he has proposed 1 crew. He may possibly go to 2 crews. And so that's the delivery of contract 1. For contract 2, which is the last third of the project, we anticipate that it's going to be advertised within probably the next 90 days. We do think that it's an above average possibility that we can utilize this same inspector on contract 2 to at least inspect a portion of the work. But I will have to clarify that by saying if contract 1 has 2 crews going, contract 2 ends up with 2 crews, we're going to have to advise you if we think that may decrease the quality of the inspection work and we're concerned about what's going in the ground. And, you know, we're going to try to make that work, but if we don't think we can, we have to tell you. So,
Tom, my question, does it cost us more when we have to go outside rather than when we do all the inspections in-house?
The preference would be to inspect in-house, Mr. Brock. There is what you're paying externally is you've got the hourly rate of the individual, but you also have the overhead from the firm that you're that is providing the individual. In our situation, obviously our overhead is embedded into the budget. So if we could, we would do that. We just think we got a capacity issue and a complexity issue that we can't advise you to do that with the other projects and the current staffing. And we've got good folks on staff. I don't know that we've got it. I do know. We don't have anybody that's inspected something that's this large a project. And that's part of the concern.
Thank you.
John, one of you guys point out that the total change order, I think, is about $490. Break that down between what we're actually being charged for construction inspection versus the additional charges for breaking the project in half and CA on both projects and whatnot.
So
go ahead, John.
The total in amendment number 1 is $495,000. So in the breakdown for amendment number 1, it's $390,000 for RPR services, which is field inspection, and then an additional $10,000 for overtime. So basically $400,000 total for inspection services of the entire amendment number 1 total.
And that's for a 19-month duration.
Correct.
I got a question. So you have overtime, resident hours in there, project hours in there. Is there, and it may be in here and I may have overlooked it. What's the completion date for that? And is there a contingency built in this proposal? And if we don't use overtime, because that, overtime sounds like contingency unless you're trying to rush to get a job done at a certain date. And if you don't use those overtime hours, do you give them back?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing is it's for total 19 months. The way that the amendment was worded is it's billed hourly. So any hours at the end of the project that are not used, we won't pay them for them. When the inspector's on site for the duration of the project, they'll give us a timesheet. They'll be billed hourly, whether that's the normal rate or the overtime rate, but in the end, we'll pay just for what they're on site for.
So what happens when you go, I mean, is there a chance we go over what we're potentially approving? And
Commissioner Murphy, we have been there and we've done that on a rare occasion. We have to come back to the council and say, we need an amendment to the amendment.
do you feel good about this price, completing all the work, the said work here? I mean, you feel good about this?
Yes, we do. We think that that's a conservative number. Now, when we bid contract two may get finished within the bounds of the 19 months, or contract two may run beyond the 19 months. If contract two runs beyond the 19 months, we will be back to talk to you.
Hopefully it won't, right?
Hopefully it won't.
Hopefully it won't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Murphy, did you have any further questions on that item?
No, sir, but I will be a stickler on finish dates.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Fowler, did you have any questions on that item?
No, I just wondered why it wasn't in there initially, and I know after hearing and reading some more, so I'm good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I have found my questions, but I didn't find any email where there were answers. So.
Okay. Do you want to start with your questions and just work down that email as a list?
Yeah, real quickly. One of the other ones was, looking at the cost of Woodland. Pete, what was the original estimate for Woodland? And I see we're doing the whole HVAC replacement for the school. Are we still, when we estimated, what we were going to be funding all of these different school projects for, are we still on schedule there to be close to those estimates?
Randy?
Yes, Commissioner Brock, we are. The original estimate from the architect, including replacing the HVAC, was based on his schematic drawings, and his estimate was $6 million. And as we actually put this out to bid, the bid market changes probably monthly around here. And so we only had two bidders who bid on this project, but they were both quality contractors. And so the bid came in at $7.5 million after everything was said and done. So that was including replacing all the HVAC. The building's about 30 years old. So the HVAC is really past its useful life expectancy. One of the big things that run the cost up, we got quotes ahead of time for equipment quotes, just the equipment without the installation or anything else came in at about $1 million. So that was just the cost of the equipment for the entire school. But one of the bigger costs that we saw come in was replacing all the ductwork in a 30-year-old school. And this ductwork was installed with fiber insulation on the inside of the ductwork. So after 30 years of running and collecting dust and germs and everything else, it was still inside that ductwork, and it's almost impossible to get all that to be cleaned out. So the plan was to move forward and tearing out all the ductwork and replacing it with new ductwork. We are still moving in that direction just because of, if we're going to spend money to fix this, we want to make sure we do it correctly and that we have a good, modern, up-to-date system. The system's also being designed for COVID-19. We're increasing our MERV rating on our filtering system. We're also bringing in substantial outside air to turn over the air in the classrooms and in all the spaces more frequently. But when the bids got broken down, we broke them down. The construction part still came in at about $200 a square foot for the construction of the 8 classrooms. And so that quote came in with the site work and everything at about $3.5 million, just like the architect estimated. Where the cost increase came in was on the HVAC update. And it's just because of how technology changes, how codes change. We happen to mount these units on the roof, whereas before they were in a mechanical room. It was a water source heat pump system. Now, in order to meet the ASHRAE standards for the fresh air, we have to use different type of equipment. And then changing out all that ductwork entailed changing out all the ceiling tiles, changing out the ceiling grid, checking out the sprinklers. So there was a lot of work to prep for changing that. So once we got those costs in, the bid came in at about $7.5 million. We sat down and started value engineering the project with the architect and the mechanical engineer and the contractor, and we come up with about $480-some thousand worth of savings that did not change the scope of the work at all. So the project's still getting completely all new ductwork and all new equipment for the HVAC. The 8 classrooms are being built exactly like they were originally designed, and all the site work. We just changed some products, different approaches, and figured out better ways of accomplishing the task. So the scope of work staying the same, and we were able to shave off about $500,000, but that puts it down to $7 million. Now, when you add that in, we already know what the cost of South Side addition is going to be, and we've got a really good high side estimate of what Lake Ridge is going to be. And so we have, once we look at the money that was borrowed or the bond that was issued for these 3 projects, with this all coming in the way it's doing now, even with Woodland being at $7 million, we still have about a $200,000 cushion from what bonds were issued compared to all the costs that we already have in place. So we're well under our budgeted amount right now.
Randy, on those value engineered items, do you review those with the building users? I mean, I'll look down through the list, and I know how some other projects we've value engineered things, and it's made a big difference kind of down the road that we wish we had not done that. So you review these with the people who actually have to live in that building?
I absolutely already have. Yes, ma'am. And I actually, sometimes when you value engineer, you do change things that really change how the end user is going to be impacted. The things that are in this, there's only one thing in there that we've included that will impact the end user, and that was a canopy on the outside covering a sidewalk that we're going to eliminate. At the end of the project, we do have about $300,000 worth of contingency in this. If that contingency is still available, we will look at putting that particular item back in. But the other things that we value engineered is still going to be a product that the end user will never know was different. But I did go over all this with, I did go over all this with Dr. Barnett and the principal.
Okay. I was going to say, maybe the school system will be willing to step up and fund that canopy if they really want it.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's good. The other thing was the chiller at the maintenance contract on the chiller. And it appeared to me, from the best I could determine, the school system was going to be paying for that maintenance contract. And I was just kind of curious, since that chiller also supplies Freedom Hall.
And that's absolutely correct. And how this came about, this is a energy efficient type design. It's going to be optimizing the chiller plant and the cooling tower. So we're going to take out some fixed speed drives in there and change them with variable speed drives that'll adjust itself to when certain amount of chilled water is going to be called for going through the cooling tower to feed all of the Science Hill campus. And so what this is actually going to result in is about a $50,000 a year electrical savings at the chiller plant itself. And so since the chiller plant electricity bill is paid by the school systems, they're going to be reaping that savings of that $50,000 a year. So when I approached Dr. Barnett and the school board about this, and we've talked about this for about a year to show them what the savings are going to be and to explain what the process is going to take place, they agreed that since they're going to be saving the money on the electrical bill, that they should pay for the cost of doing this. And this is incorporated into a service agreement that they've already been paying on a yearly basis up there already. So we just included the cost of the chiller tower optimization into that service agreement, spread it out over 5 years. So they make 5 yearly payments to get it paid for, and the savings from the electrical use on the second year will cover more than what their payment is for that second year. So that's why it just made a lot of sense for the school to pay for it instead of the city.
Okay. Now that the students are out of Freedom Hall, will we be picking up the utility costs for that building?
Yes, ma'am. I've already talked with Leah, and we have a sub-meter on that building. And so we've been kind of modeling that cost every month and seeing what that is. And so starting in the bill that comes in February will be the first one that the city is picking up on the electricity.
Thank you. And then my other one was just the privilege tax, and I imagine we'll get to that conversation in this meeting, or if you want to do it now. My questions were, if approved, will it apply only to the 2021? Is this is on a calendar cycle, not a fiscal year? When will it be effective, and or does it become retroactive, I guess?
Sonny, could I ask, if you're on, can I get you to answer these questions, please?
Yes, just a moment. Can we actually move this down the agenda just a
Sure.
little bit?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. We'll come back to it in just a minute. Commissioner Brock, did you have other items we can work?
There's one rezoning that we're going to get, and I made some comments on it. Now, as I'm on the planning commission, I abstained on this vote, but had asked that when it's presented to us Thursday night, that we have more information on the neighborhood meetings. And anyway, I think that's kind of a self discussion there, but that was just my only other thing.
You're talking about the 6.1 item.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, over on Maple. Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Fowler, did you have items on the agenda you wanted, Vice Mayor Fowler, I'm sorry, that you wanted to address?
No, I think all mine have been answered.
All right. Commissioner Hunter, do you want to come back to you?
The only thing I had would be, and Mr. Peterson, I appreciate you sending us the information in respect to the HR policy request. Could we have Mr. Willis attend and kind of talk through, the struggles that they're having with recruiting and whatnot, that might, for our Thursday night meeting, not today, but I appreciate the info.
Yes, sir.
That's all I've got.
All right. Are there any questions commissioners have yet to get out on the table?
Mayor Wise, I have one
Yes, sir.
question. And this is for Mr. Randy Tribbett regarding 5.2.2. You have the $7+ million proposal on the table. And you mentioned replacing ductwork. And so we have several classrooms here. And I just have a question regarding ductwork applications with respect to fire dampers, and what are the ratings of those classrooms? Because and I'll tell you where this concern comes from, because if those walls are rated maybe 1-2 hour or plus, then there's certain fire damper applications that are required, and those things can be rather expensive, and they got to be tied into the fire alarm system. And does that require upgrades for fire alarm system? And so just wanted to talk a little bit about that. You don't have to, we can talk one-on-one if we have to, but just concerned about the safety of our students for future.
Absolutely. And I believe I can answer that question fairly quickly. This building is completely sprinkled. And so that gives you a little bit of leeway when it comes to your fire dampers. So the only place fire dampers are going to be mostly required are when we're coming out of mechanical rooms that are protected. The return air on this building's already set up as an open plenum. And so we're going to continue to use that open plenum to do a lot of the return air and then duct in some of the return air off the outsides. So everywhere that there needs to be a fire damper because of having replaced the ductwork, there will be one installed. And it's already calculated or already designed in to tie into the existing fire alarm system. So all that's been covered so that because we have to send these plans and drawings into the state fire marshal, and these have already been submitted to the state for plan review, and they've already approved the design of the alarm system and the building and the construction and even replacing the existing HVAC system. And then after we get it approval from the state, we send it in through the local city building department and they approve it. But all that has been taken into account, and everything that we can do to improve the safety of our schools, we're doing that. A lot of this project also, just to kind of give you more of an update on this, is that we're trying to secure our foyers for our kids a little more from strangers walking in. So there's a lot of part of this construction that goes into adding some hallway walls and doors so that when somebody actually gets allowed into the foyer at Woodland, for example, they can't go any further into the building unless they're authorized and buzzed in. And so we're actually doing some bullet resistant glass, some teller windows so that people can check in and protect the people and the staff there, but mostly protecting the children. So all that's been taken into account.
So you won't be back for more money to upgrade the fire alarm system?
No,
Well, he
sir.
can't promise that.
Unless there's just some other problem that comes about.
I'm just asking a question.
Did that get your questions, Commissioner Murphy?
Yes, sir.
All right, Commissioner Hunter, you're good. Can we come back to Commissioner Brock's question? Ms. Sandos, are you able to speak to that?
Yes. So the first question, I believe, was regarding whether or not the taxes, or whether or not, I guess, the proposed ordinance would apply retroactively. Not the way that it is currently written, it would not. And I apologize. Can you remind me of the follow-up questions?
The other question was, is it on a calendar year or fiscal year?
It's a calendar year.
Okay, so this would go into effect, if approved, at that point going forward till December 31st of 2020.
Correct. The way that it is written, the tax to be levied under that reduction would be due December 31st of this year, of 2021.
And then the last question on it was, if the way it's written now, and I know one of the concerns early on was that if we change it now, we can't go back and change it back to where it was. Is that still the case, or is it written in a way that it just takes the occupancy at that time and puts it in a formula?
Yes, we've crafted the ordinance so that we don't run the risk of not being able to go back to current levels, which is why we put it in as called a pandemic period privilege tax, so that it's only applicable during this triggering event.
That's good. That takes care of that then.
Did that get all your questions, Commissioner Brock?
I believe it did.
All right, thank you. Mr. Peterson, are there any other items on the agenda that you think need review in advance of Thursday's meeting?
None that I'm aware of, sir.
All right. Well, if there's no objection, then I guess we can adjourn our agenda workshop and we'll reconvene this Thursday.